I'm Beth Pariseau, Senior News Writer at Informa Tech Target, and this is IT Ops Query Season 3, Observability in the Age of AI. In December 2024, security and observability vendor Coralogix bought an AI observability startup, Aporia. In March, Coralogix launched its AI Center based on that IP. Ariel Assaraf, CEO of Coralogix, said during that launch that AI is not just another technology layer, it's a distinct stack with its own complexities and risks. Today, I'm happy to have him join me as a guest to talk more about that topic. Thanks for being with us, Ariel.
Thank you very much for having me, Beth.
So, what are the unique complexities and risks of AI for observability and governance?
Interestingly, the word observability is common between AI and software, though they're completely different, right? AI is not software. And so the type of monitoring you'd apply, the type of risks you think about are completely different. What happens is that people tend to look at AI as just another service, and they'd say, well, you write code to generate it, so I assume you'd monitor it like code, which is completely false. So there's no working and not working in AI. There's a gradient of options when you're using an AI model. It's a lot less deterministic, or it's completely non-deterministic. And damage to your company or your business or your operations can be done without any error or without any metric going off. So if it's the wrong answer, the wrong decision, toxicity, compliance issues, those things are not tied to latency or CPU or error rates. And so monitoring them is a complete new world of how you're looking at data, and those risks are very different than what we have from deterministic software, where the risks are, I know what it's going to do, and I need to make sure that it does that. And so beyond the monitoring stack and the observability point of view around AI versus software, it's also how do we as companies embrace those technologies, and how do we make sure that we adjust our way of thinking and our way of operating to this new era, because we can't avoid it because we're just going to lag behind our competitors. On the other hand, as we expose it, we expose ourselves to all these risks.
So how do you apply observability to AI then?
Observability for AI, the way that we look at it is, how do we first of all understand where AI is being used in the organization? So kind of mapping out, we'd call it AI SPM, sort of like CSPM. How do we map out the usage of AI across the organization to have a picture of those risks? Why are AI models being used and by who? So there are a lot of internal use cases, and the ease of usage makes it that every software engineer can now produce magnificent features using AI models that can provide a ton of value, but also obviously exposed to a lot of risks. Or cost, by the way, which is another concern that companies have that's a lot less predictable than software. When we think about AI observability and how we address it, we think about what are the guardrails, which is, a common word in AI. What are the guardrails that companies want to have? Because like I said, there's no working and not working, there's a range. So within that range, where do you want to land? What is the level of freedom you want to allow your model? What is the level of accuracy? And again, companies that'll try to use a ton of shadow prompts to navigate AI models to answer very specific answers, they're going to end up with software, which they enter this game to have that non-deterministic, more intelligent point of view that they can present to their customers. And so if you try to overly scope it, you end up with just expensive and more complex software. If you understand your guardrails, you understand your risks, and you apply those guardrails, that is where monitoring starts. I know what services are using AI and whether they should or shouldn't use AI. Then I understand the guardrails for each service, depending on what data it has access to, what customers does it serve, what use cases. And then I can also understand what is the cost that I'm allowing each service and each use case. And then the underlying will be the standard observability measures, right? Which is latency and errors, because they do happen. The fact that them not happening doesn't mean something wrong isn't happening, doesn't mean that we can allow them to happen. So we're going to track those as well. And then we start from understanding, then guardrailing, and then monitoring. Those will be the three big pillars for AI observability.
And how does a tool like AI Center get visibility into things like how the LLM is responding and whether it's biased or toxic or incorrect? How do you actually get that data?
So what's so special about how Coralogix operates the AI Center? That's why we call it the AI Center. It's a separate interface inside Coralogix that answers those specific mindset shifts that we're talking about that companies are going to have to go through. So it starts with our AI SPM. We automatically understand all your services that are using any of the AI models and list them in front of you. You'll get a service catalog, kind of similar to what we do for APM, only again, for AI that says, here are all your applications and services using AI. Here's their error rates, the security threats that we've discovered within them. Here's the cost, the amount of tokens that you've sent there. And here are the amount of users that are using them. And also, here's the model that you're using. Because old models that are out of your policies, et cetera, those obviously we want to make sure that we're capturing. Then you'd be able to apply the AI Center guardrails. There are about 20 pre-built ones, and there are custom ones that you can generate. Those could be toxicity, sexism, compliance, data leak, SQL enforcement, so on and so forth, that you can apply for each and every of those catalog items that we've exposed, because each and every one of them is going to require something different. If it's a support agent, then obviously I want to apply compliance, I want to apply toxicity because I interact with external customers. If it's a service that is serving an internal purpose, maybe I want to look at data leak, I want to look at SQL enforcement, so on and so forth. And once you do that, you'll start getting stats on how many hits you've had that hit one of these guardrails. And Coralogix will let you go all the way to replaying that particular interaction with the agent. So I can see, okay, the user had accessed my support agent, and whether it's an hallucination or a toxic response or maybe a toxic behavior by the user, I want to look at that chat and replay that so I can maybe interact with that user and proactively resolve the issue. We've seen so many cases over the last couple of years about companies making big AI moves, then suffering massive clashes with reality, if you call it, and rolling back. So it's funny, but over the last 12 months, you almost see an identical number of AI models being rolled back as they are rolled into production by many companies.
Wow.
They're hitting those risks, understanding rolling back and saying, okay, let's replan. So I'd say put your AI models on a tight leash in the beginning and gradually open it up to enable more of that intelligence to actually serve your customers in a non-deterministic way. And then, of course, we go back to the general stats. How much are you paying per model, per service, latency, error rates, failures, network issues, and so on. Now, another thing that we've done here that I think is very unique to Coralogix, we created an open telemetry connector for the AI models. And so we're able to propagate a trace all the way from the front end, because our Reels monitoring product also relies on open telemetry, all the way through the model to the back end. And so when a user interacts with a model, it'll also, besides the separate world of AI monitoring that we talked about, it'll also become part of your production, part of your user experience. You can look at a user journey end to end and understand what is the experience that he's getting, no matter if it's regular software or AI.
So is that true of models that are hosted via an API, or only for people who have them hosted themselves on premises?
So it's both on the API side, but also we scan the code. So we see any call to any AI model, wherever you put it, no matter if you're going out or inside your network.
And then the response reveals which model is responding?
Yeah. And the header of the response will know what model it is.
Okay. Interesting. So what role have you seen observability from that software side play in people using AI well or properly? What role does observability have to play in enterprise AI?
When you think about enterprise AI, what does it mean? What are enterprises trying to achieve? There are different branches here. Some of them are trying to get better customer experience. Some of them are trying to get more intelligent systems that derive better insights. Some of them are trying to achieve efficiency, right? So they're trying to save jobs and reduce workforces because they have AI doing these stuff for them. Different enterprises will take AI different places. What observability gives enterprises is the certainty or the confidence that they're moving the right path, no matter what vector they chose. So if I can monitor observability and the interactions with users and understand how many users have interacted with my model, how much did it cost me, how many issues were resolved, how many escalations did I have, and then how long does it take me end to end to close a case? Now I can maybe use AI and harness it to reduce the workforce. If I'm looking at insights and I track hallucinations and I track data breaches and I track SQL enforcements, then I can see if I'm giving better insights or how many of the insights are actually generated by AI. If I get that feedback loop from the user, I can understand if I'm moving the right path. And the other one, if I'm looking to serve my customers, how do I make sure that I'm not creating the opposite effect? Obviously, if there's toxicity or sexism, I'm actually doing the opposite of what I was planning, which was giving the customers a better experience. So everyone understands that in order to remain competitive, especially in the enterprise space, because if you're a small company, you're not concerned about AI, you see a big opportunity with AI. If you're a big company, you're mainly concerned for, hypothetically, if I a market leading company, AI is the worst thing that has ever happened, right? I'm in a great spot. I'm leading the market. I gain traction. I continuing to grow. I'm profitable. For me, a dramatic tectonic change like AI is something that now I need to figure out how do I handle. It is not. It is also an opportunity, of course, but it's beyond that is a risk. And so, no matter what vector I chose or where I'm gonna, maybe both or maybe three of them, the confidence to adopt while not risking my base is one of the most important things. And so, having eyes on the ball, knowing what are people doing so I can give people the freedom to use AI and not, we see a lot of enterprises kind of having a policy. No one uses AI without the CIO and CISO's approval, right? Makes sense because they have a lot to protect, but obviously throttles innovation. So if I can tell who's using AI, how they're using it, who's interacting with it, how much does it cost me, what model they're using, what data they're accessing, now I can give a lot more freedom to people. And I can say, use whatever you want. Don't go to production before we approved it. Then I'll look at the staging environment. I'll see exactly what they're doing. I'll replay some of the sessions. I'll say, okay, you're good to go to production. So that's one big advantage that observability has for AI. Once it's in production, the ability to track results and understand whether we're actually gaining what we were aiming for. Because we also have AI use cases that we're saying this could have been 5 conditions, right?
Yeah.
So, and many times you enter these situations where you're chatting with an AI agent or an AI bot, I should say, for support, for instance, and it kind of just navigates you to documents or that could have easily been a 3 selection menu that you get.
Yeah.
In those cases, a lot of times they'll see more frustration by users or they'll compare with an A/B test to the other solution and they'll understand, and there is huge potential. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use it, but understanding whether you're getting the ROI that you've expected is critical for them to understand if they want to continue investing in that path. The ability to observe, track, monitor, protect enables them the confidence and the measurements they need to know that they're moving the right way. So you have a lot to risk and they can still go with this new software because they understand that if they don't do anything, those smaller startups that are not having anything to lose are one of them is gonna make the right choice with AI and overcome the bigger leader.
The classic innovator's dilemma.
Exactly.
Also, just out of curiosity, how can a monitoring or observability tool track or detect when a AI model is hallucinating?
That's a great question. Without getting too technical, the old way to do that would have been a bunch of shadow prompts that say, don't answer this, don't answer if you don't know that. And whatever question that you're asking, it'll be just attached with a bunch of shadow prompts. The way we look at it or the way we solve this issue, we create smaller models that make sure that the only answers provided are coming from the context specifically provided by you. Because the models know everything, right? So how do we scope them to, for instance, only answer product questions from this documentation and that documentation? How do we take a big model and say, a Coralogix model and say, don't recommend a competitor, right? So I can use a shadow prompt that says, whatever people are asking you on how to run a Coralogix query, don't mention this company and don't mention that company. And then whatever question you'll ask, you'll say, how do I run a logs query? It'll say, this is how you run it. But the question that it gets will say, don't mention how it's done in 10 different competitors. But the way we do this with the smaller models, there'll be a small model that's only knowing the Coralogix documentation. So mistakes cannot happen. And then I don't need to add any shadow prompts because those competitors aren't there. And that's how I prevented compliance issues, obviously competition enforcement that I don't want to move. But I also prevented hallucination because those hallucinations will come from data sources that aren't mine or aren't certified, will come from assumptions that the model can make based on maybe read another product's documentation and it assumes that Coralogix should be able to do the same. Or maybe it read someone's questions. Can Coralogix do this? And then it assumed that it can. And so once I scope it with smaller models, I create the level of freedom that I want to create. So I'm not seeing it every question, what to say and how to answer. By the way, also costs a lot less because the prompts are smaller. And it's also faster because the prompts are smaller and the models are smaller. But it's also providing me the perfect guardrail to make sure that mistakes cannot happen.
So people that use AI Center, they get those smaller models from the product, or is that, okay, interesting.
It's kind of out of the box,
Oh, okay. And so we're hearing a lot this year about agentic AI, AI agents. How do you see that changing all this? How do you see that evolving?
It's very interesting because everything we talked about until now that related more in the chatbots world, the opportunity and those risks, take that and multiply it by 100. And that's what we're talking about when we're looking at agents, right? Because the opportunity is obviously huge. I can actually run research for customers. I can replace workforce. I can give an experience that's unmatched. On the other hand, with great power comes great risk in this case. And the potential for damage is just infinite. When we're looking at SRE agents, root cause analysis, just in my domain, I'm not even talking financials and health where it's going to take a lot of time to get the confidence that they need. But even in my space, if a service was restarted without reason, if a service was detached from this, just imagine the damage that an AI agent can create. And so what we think is going to happen is over the next 2 or 3 years, that gap that we see between the experience that you're getting as a consumer with data, you're getting we live in an opposite world where your consumer experience is way better than your B2B experience with data, which used to be the opposite, right? Like it used to be that tech companies had great data products and at home you use the phone book.
Right.
But suddenly at home, you use agents, you run research, you conversate with the entire data set of the world, and then you get to work and you build a graph and you use Excel. And so that gap's going to close no matter what. Whether it's a small, big company, people are going to start building on their own, something's going to happen. But those huge risks are going to enforce that. Companies will go very, very slowly with agents. Those agents will release to market with very specific jobs. They'll almost be automations plus, I'd call it, not agents. And then gradually companies will release the leash. And I think monitoring and observability for AI and AI agents like ourselves will have to evolve to support that and give that confidence. I don't think anyone is there yet to say, I can monitor, secure, and observe your AI agent, just like we do for the LLMs. No one's there at the agent level to understand what is the task that the agent's been given, what is the thought process of that agent, and what is the answer or the job or the recommendation that the agent is doing correct. No one's there yet to provide that journey at the agent level. We're good at the model level. So us as companies, we're going to have to evolve into saying, what is the specific job that you expect this agent to do? What is considered good or not? Which is kind of crazy, right? Because it's sort of like monitoring people.
Yeah.
It's like, How do I monitor an engineer to tell you whether, and so many companies have tried to do that, right? To how do I monitor and engineer productivity and quality? Now I have to do that for almost anything for AI agents.
Mm-hmm.
How do I monitor an AI agent productivity versus its cost? We just heard OpenAI saying that the $200 a month accounts are losing money.
Yeah.
So world where this gets commercialized and companies like us and others are going to expose agents, how do you measure that? How do you measure that it's doing a better job than manual work that your customers are doing? That's going to be a whole new world of observability. And as we look at it, 2-3 years into the future, the majority of our revenue is going to be from monitoring AI workloads and agents, not monitoring traditional stuff.
Yeah. What do you think it's going to take to get to monitoring AI agents? Is it a visibility issue? Is it just more how you approach looking at them?
I think there's not enough use cases that we can track and monitor, not enough evals that we can look at today and understand what is good and bad. I don't think that there's yet enough commercial opportunity for companies to invest the amount of time and research that they need to invest. We're starting to do that. But obviously, there's giants are going to lead the way here at some point and generate the framework, just like OpenAI built the framework for agents. They're going to build the framework for monitoring agents. And monitoring observability companies are going to use those frameworks and then apply it to their stack. So companies that use the OpenAI framework for agents will also have it with the AI monitoring framework for agents. But I don't see that taking more than, I'd say, 12 to 24 months. What's going to happen now? We're now starting to see the beginning of movement from build to run when it comes to AI. So it's always build, run, secure. We're starting to see the movement to run. So we're going to start to see more interest around observability and AI and then security and AI, right? Because after you make sure the agent is efficient or whatever, the LLM is efficient, doesn't hallucinate, customers are getting great experience, now people are going to start trying to gain benefit by breaking into those agents, and then security is going to become bigger.
Sure.
So I think what's stopping us between where we are now in AI agents monitoring is there's just no one's defined the framework and the pain point, and not enough companies are willing to pay for it, so everyone will make that investment.
Right. And to get back to something else you touched on, a lot of knowledge workers, including software developers, are worried about the force reduction you refer to. How much do you think knowledge workers need to worry about that? How much of a reduction in human workforce is there going to be, in your view?
We have a more radical view on this.
Okay.
We think that, coming back to what I talked about, your expectations as a user, we think that the level of expectations of the consumers and the businesses from technology is going to grow faster than how AI is going to accelerate R&D. And so even if for what I'm doing today, I'm going to need in 2 years with AI coding, even if from what I'm doing today, I'm going to need 1 developer to 10, okay? So even if AI will reduce 90% of the workforce that I have today, the demand in 3 years is going to be 20x, okay? So you're going to expect how you're using data, how you're using applications, how you're using your car, how you're using your smart home, how you're interacting with service providers. You're going to expect such experience that's going to create so many features and so many AI agents and so many products and so much monitoring and security that actually engineering jobs are going to increase at that point.
Okay.
Which very similar to a lot of technology shifts, right? So a lot of people thought when cloud computing came and started rising, a lot of people thought, what's going to happen to system engineers? No one needs them anymore. What's going to happen to network engineers? No one needs them anymore. But no one understood at that point that a company the size of Coralogix, 500 people, is going to have 10,000 servers suddenly. Because 10,000 servers in the on-prem world is a building of servers. No one expected that the demand for infra is going to grow so much more than the reduction of complexity of running infra, that we're actually needing more of these people.
Yeah.
And so I think that's very similar to what we're going to see.
Okay. Well, I hope you're right. And thank you for sharing your insights. It's a unique perspective on this, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Beth.
This has been IT Ops Query Season 3, Observability in the Age of AI. If you have any feedback on this episode or want to share questions, comments, or stories we should consider covering, please reach out to me at beth.pariseau, that's PARISEAU, at informatechtarget.com. Please consider rating, reviewing, and subscribing to this podcast on your platform of choice, and tune in next week for our continued conversations with industry experts about how observability is shaping AI and how AI is shaping observability.